Good evening, you're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. The Sultanate stands at second place on Arab level in Global Food Security Index for 2016. U.S. Secretary of State and Russian Foreign Minister gather in Lausanne for talks to achieve a resolution on the Syrian conflict. And nearly 200 nations agreed to a deal to cut the greenhouse gases. Those are the headlines, and now for the news in detail. The Sultanate's ranking at Global Food Security Index for 2016 increased to the second place at the Arab level and the 26th place globally. This was announced by the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries Wealth. The ministry said that this ranking came as a result of stimulating the investment climate for agriculture and fisheries wealth sectors, improving food production in the Sultanate, increasing self-dependence rates, and enhancing food security. This achievement also was attributed to building a strategic food storage system, liberalization of commodities, imports, supporting some commodities, paying attention to increasing food production in the agriculture sector and fisheries sector, establishing several government companies concerned with food production, in addition to putting up a strategy for sustainable agriculture and rural development till 2040. The gross non-oil revenues in the Sultanate by the end of 2015 stood at 1.9 billion Omani riyals, recording a decline by 13% compared to 2.2 billion riyals in 2014. The statistics released by the National Center for Statistics and Information pointed out that tax revenues constituted 47.4% of the gross non-oil revenues, comprising a decline by 1.3%. On the other hand, the services revenues exceeded 117 million Omani riyals, as the total investment revenues stood at more than 390 million riyals. With the aim to develop and strengthen Scout capabilities in serving the society, the Sultanate participated world countries in celebrating the International Scout Camp for Wireless Communication and Internet in the Governorate of South Batna. This year, the event focused on making contact between Scouts and guides around the world by using modern technology means. The camp highlighted on websites the support for friendship and technology skills to serve Scouts and guides. It provided big spaces on websites for competition and innovation. As to meet the increasing demand for electricity power in the Governorate of Dahira, the construction works continued at Al Duray's electricity plant in the Wilaya of Ibri at a total cost of 10 million Omani riyals. The project came to keep pace with the social and economic development in the Governorate of Dahira. It is expected to be completed by the summer 2017. The project came with the efforts being exerted by Oman Electricity Transmission Company to enhance and support electricity networks in all governance of the Sultanate. The company is also implementing the biggest electricity plan in the Wilaya of Ibri to be connected with electricity plants in the Wilaya of Izki. Latest treatment methods and modern technology in the field of emergency medicine were presented at the first National Emergency Nursing Conference held in the Wilaya of Sohar. The event was organized by the Oman Emergency Medicine Association in cooperation with Sohar University. It discussed a number of topics related to nursing at intensive care and emergency medicine and the latest developments in this field. A number of scientific lectures were delivered and some work papers were presented by some specialists in emergency medicine. Still to come in our news bulletin. The Sultanate, represented by the Ministry of Health, marks World Elderly Day. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. United States Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov returned to Syria talks today, 3 weeks after the failure of their painstakingly drafted ceasefire that many saw as the last hope for peace this year. Kerry had pointedly avoided new bilateral negotiations with Lavrov, who arrived in Switzerland's Lausanne last night. Kerry's invitation to the Turkish, Saudi, Qatari, Iranian, Jordanian and Egyptian foreign ministers to join them for talks will broaden the discussion to include powerful backers of Syria's government and rebels. A senior U.S. State Department official said since the breakdown of U.S.-Russia cooperation, long the backbone of efforts to end the war in Syria, U.S. officials have worked through ideas, some of which will be presented. The new talks will not deliver an immediate solution, but could be the basis of a new process. Aleppo, Syria's biggest city before the war, has been divided into areas controlled by the government and rebels for several years. The rebel-held east is the largest major urban stronghold of the nationalist rebels fighting the government, and recapturing it would be a major strategic prize. The Syrian army announced a major offensive to capture the rebel-held part of the city on September 22nd, unleashing firepower not previously seen in the 5.5-year-long war. The onslaught has killed several hundred people and flattened many buildings. Hospitals have also been hit. Syria's civil war has killed 300,000 people and left millions homeless, while dragging in regional and global powers and allowing for the expansion of militant groups, including Daesh, which controls wide areas of the east. The Arab-led coalition battling Yemeni rebels said that one of its warplanes had wrongly targeted a funeral in the capital Sana'a, killing more than 140 people, and announced disciplinary proceedings. The October 8th strike prompted an international outcry and strong criticism even from Saudi Arabia's closest Western allies. The strike was one of the deadliest in the coalition's near 19-month-old bombing campaign in support of Yemen's beleaguered government. More than 6,700 people have been killed in the Arabian Peninsula country since the coalition first intervened, nearly two-thirds of them civilians. Britain is to present a draft resolution to the UN Security Council next week, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Yemen, after an earlier text condemning the funeral bombing was rejected by Russia as not strong enough. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said that Iraq could not deal alone with driving Daesh from the city of Mosul, and that the presence of Turkish forces in a nearby military camp was an insurance against attacks on Turkey, which has been locked in a fierce row with Iraq's central government over the presence of Turkish troops in northern Iraq, and over who should take part in the planned US-backed assault on Mosul. Speaking at a ceremony in the Black Sea town of Reis, Erdogan said Turkey would not allow Daesh or any other organization to control Mosul. He also said Turkish-backed rebels in neighboring Syria were advancing on Daesh-held village of Dabik in the country's northwest. Nearly 200 nations hammered out a legally binding deal to cut back on greenhouse gases used in refrigerators and air conditioners, a Rwandan minister announced today, in a major step against climate change. The deal, which includes the world's two biggest economies, the United States and China, divided groups into three with different deadlines to reduce the use of factory-made hydrofluorocarbon gases, which can be 10,000 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as greenhouse gases. Two groups of developing countries will freeze their use of the gases by either 2024 or 2028, and then gradually reduce their use. India, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and the Gulf countries will meet the later deadline. Within the framework to focus on the awareness side and taking care of the health of the eyes, the Sultanate marked World Sight Day in a ceremony held in the Governorate of Muscat. It aims to spread health awareness among all categories of the society on the significance of the eye, and to preserve it within the context of great efforts exerted by the Sultanate to limit eye diseases. The event, which witnessed a huge attendance from members of the society and those interested in this field, was organized by Oman Ophthalmologist Society in cooperation with Sultan Qaboos University, Hospital, Armed Forces Hospital, and the Ministry of Health. With the aim of spreading awareness on how to deal with the elderly and achieve the principle of involving them in activities and events in the society, the Sultanate, represented by the Ministry of Health, marked World Elderly Day. The event came to highlight the significance of caring for elderly people and the role played by them in serving the community. The celebration included artistic shows and lectures on ways to take care of the elderly. Participants and contributors to the success of the event were honoured at the end of the ceremony. The Ministry of Health set up a health programme for elderly care in coordination with other specialised bodies. The Omani Association for Elderly Friends also works to render services that give the elderly people the feeling of their importance in the society and spread awareness of ways to care for them. Now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Clear skies will prevail over most of the governorates, with chances of cloud accumulation and scattered rain over the Hajar Mountains. Winds will be northeasterly light to moderate over the coast of the Sea of Oman, whilst along the coast of the Arabian Sea it will be southwesterly light to moderate. Seas will be slight to moderate along the coast of the Arabian Sea with a maximum wave height of 1.5 metres. The rest of the coast it will be slight with a maximum wave height of 1 metre. This is the Sultanate of Oman Television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Sultanate stands at the second place on Arab level in Global Food Security Index for 2016. U.S. Secretary of State and Russian Foreign Minister gather in Lausanne for talks to achieve a resolution on the Syrian conflict. And nearly 200 nations agreed to a deal to cut the greenhouse gases. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsrooms and the studio, it's good night.